Evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Rajsekhar, sir.
Unmute, Vinal. Please unmute. Yeah, please.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. Dr. Rajsekhar, sir, Dr. Sujoy, Dr. Soumik, and all the attendees here. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to be here this evening. Dr. Muruganathan, sir, thank you so much for, first of all, having organized such an academy and thinking a very focused academic approach towards things. Very much great to have a webinar and a web series on thyroid disorders actually, because we have almost always been talking about diabetes mostly. So it's really nice to talk on other things about endocrinology rather than diabetes alone. So with that, the topic that has been allotted this evening to be discussed is thyrotoxicosis and anti-thyroid drugs. I would really begin directly with the topic because we have very less time and I have been allotted only 40 minutes to talk on the topic, which really needs a little discussion. So thyrotoxicosis, the very first question that we all are asked in our right from our college days is either thyrotoxicosis is synonymous with hyperthyroidism. So that is the very first question that we all are always challenged with. So just to make a clarification, that thyrotoxicosis is a state where there is excess of thyroid hormones. Irrespective of the source from where the hormones are actually coming, or whether there is overproduction or whether it is just over-release, the state of hyperthyroid or the thyroid hormone excess is thyrotoxicosis. But when the source is thyroid gland itself, or when the gland itself is synthesizing more hormones, that is the state of hyperthyroidism. So we have to understand, when the gland is hyperfunctioning, it is hyperthyroidism. But when it is just the excess of hormones in the circulation, irrespective of the source or irrespective of the underlying condition, then we refer the condition to as thyrotoxicosis. So if we look at the classification of the thyrotoxicosis, it will also follow the same pattern, that we have a primary hyperthyroidism where we have the thyroid gland per se at fault. Then there are conditions where thyrotoxicosis without hyperthyroidism, that is, the gland is not over functioning but still the hormone levels are high, and these are the conditions of mostly the thyroiditis. And then there are certain conditions where the gland has undergone a secondary insult, when the gland per se is not directly having the disorder but it is affected by other glands maybe. So it is a condition of secondary hyperthyroidism. So this basic classification we need to understand when we are talking of thyrotoxicosis in this forum. And then we come to what are the main causes of primary hyperthyroidism. And you will all agree that the most common, though there can be a huge list, but the most common condition that we really discuss when we talk of primary hyperthyroidism is Graves' disease. Graves' disease, if we just summarize, is the most common cause of primary hyperthyroidism or even thyrotoxicosis, and this condition is more common in females. It is an autoimmune condition, a condition of diffuse toxic goiter. Mostly there is defect in the TSH receptor antibody, so the TRAb antibody levels are mostly on the higher side, and this condition leads to autoimmunity in the entire gland, and the gland starts over-functioning, overproduction of the thyroid hormones. That is the basic nature of the disease. So the exact pathogenesis that we all understand is autoimmune, and in this autoimmunity there is overproduction of the antibodies that go and block the receptors, and the receptors go into an auto mode and they go on producing more of the thyroid hormones. So if we look at the microscope, the microscopic picture is something like this. This is a normal thyroid gland where you will find the cuboidal epithelium with homogeneous colloid inside. But in the state of hyperthyroidism, that is Graves' disease, you will find that there are hyperplastic empty acini which are lined by columnar epithelium. So this is the pathology of the disease. And if you look at the pathogenesis, again you will find that in a normal condition, the TSH goes and stimulates the receptor, but in the autoimmune condition, the antibodies, they go and block the receptors, and the receptors are always in a state of activity, and that leads to overproduction of the thyroid hormones. Now coming to the clinical features of the condition, as the condition is more common in women, probably the mnemonic has been taken from the female itself, that the females with strong family history. The family history may be of any thyroid disorder, not always of hyperthyroidism. Then there are mainly extrathyroidal manifestations affecting mostly the young age women, autoimmune conditions, HLA and the T lymphocytes also contribute. There is diffuse gland enlargement, that is goiter is an important feature. Clinical features, you will find there's mostly the patient complains of weight loss, fatigue, tired, heat intolerance, tremors. There is emotional lability, there is palpitations and diarrhea. So there is weight loss in spite of overeating or good appetite. Then there is features like palpitations, insomnia, tremors of the outstretched hands. There are mood changes, there are exaggerated reflexes. Skin changes will of course be associated. We know that the palms are mostly warm and they are moist. There's profuse sweating and flushing. There is hair fall, and at times you will find there is clubbing and soft and brittle nails. Pre-tibial myxedema, there's misnomer that we all understand and we all know that this condition is seen in association with hyperthyroidism, that is Graves' disease. Though the name goes as myxedema, but the condition is not really associated with hypothyroidism. This condition is a skin complication that we come across in hyperthyroid state. There is non-pitting edema, and usually these skin changes are associated with the clubbing and the nail changes. In the cardiovascular system, you will find their sleeping pulse rate is on the higher side, and the characteristic pulse type is the water hammer pulse. There are most common tachycardia is a sinus tachycardia, though we can have atrial fibrillation associated, and mostly if you treat hyperthyroidism, you need not treat atrial fibrillation separately. So there can be extrasystoles, tachycardias, atrial fibrillations, and there can also be that atrial fibrillation may even persist even after you have treated the hyperthyroidism. On physical examination, on general physical examination, the thing that you will notice is that the patient is underweight, and if you go for the local examination, you can appreciate a goiter, and you will find there is swelling or fullness in the lower part of the neck. The gland is enlarged, symmetrical, and the skin over the gland would be warm. The surfaces are mostly smooth, and the gland moves freely. The gland is not fixed. It is movable. It moves with deglutition, with tongue protrusion. The consistency remains firm with well-defined edges. You might find a bruit. The bruit is a very characteristic feature of thyrotoxicosis. Eye signs are very common with Graves' disease. There is proptosis. So exophthalmos or the thyroid or the Graves ophthalmopathy is a very common feature that we do see. The patients do come with proptosis mainly. So in true proptosis, you will find that the sclera is clearly visible. Even below and above, you will find that sclera is clearly visible. It is not simply the protrusion, but it is the sclera which is clearly visible above the eyeball. Besides this, there are a lot of, in fact, there's a huge list of eye signs. Not only these are very limited signs that I have mentioned here, more of a theory rather. But there are a lot of signs. There is lid lag, there is staring sign, there is upper margins of the sclera is visible. So there is von Graffi's, Stellvogs, Mobius, Joffre's. These are some of the very commonly asked signs which we used to actually learn during our student life actually. But in clinical science, clinically what we just appreciate is a proptosis, and we are more bothered about the chemosis or the optic nerve damage or maybe the corneal abrasion or the corneal damage that might occur clinically. So this is not proptosis, this is not Graves' eye, this is not Graves' ophthalmopathy, this is just a wild stare. So classification of the eye signs, though they are that goes by the mnemonics no specs, that is N for no signs, O for only signs, no symptoms, soft tissue involvement, proptosis, extraocular involvement, corneal involvement. But this is just more for the mnemonic sake, that's for the remembering sake. They just do not go by the severity of thyrotoxicosis. And these are all because of the spasm and retraction of the extraocular muscles. So this is about Graves, but there are certain other conditions which we need to differentiate clinically when patient comes to us with hyperthyroid or a thyrotoxic state. And after Graves, the second most common condition that we usually come across is a toxic multinodular goiter. So in toxic multinodular goiter, you will find that there are multiple nodules, and one of these nodules, then suddenly this multinodular goiter may be existing for quite some time, and then one fine day you find that one of these nodules become autonomous and they become toxic, then they start overproducing the thyroid hormones. Eye symptoms and eye signs are usually not associated with MNG, that is multinodular goiter, the toxic MNGs. And these are usually the nodules remain in the inactive state. It is once one of the nodules might become overactive, and to differentiate we have to make the patient undergo a technetium 99 uptake scan. Then there is another condition when you come across a solitary nodule. The solitary nodule, approach to solitary nodule is the topic for the next week, of course, but just mentioning the toxic nodule here, that in case there is a solitary nodule, then also you need to find out whether the nodule is toxic, that is overproducing, or is it the remaining gland which is normal or less underproducing. So to differentiate, again we subject the patient to the technetium uptake scan, the nuclear scans. And these are the conditions which are not autoimmune. Whenever we have to differentiate between the primary hyper and the secondary hyperthyroidism, we have to understand that this is an autoimmune condition, whereas these secondary thyrotoxic conditions are not autoimmune conditions. The gland enlargements here will be diffuse, where here you will find it's nodular in features. Hyperthyroidism is usually severe, whereas in these conditions it is usually mild. Eye signs are not present. Cardiac failures or multiple extrasystoles you will find, but in Graves you will find that the cardiac failure is little rare rather. The condition mainly affects women and younger women, whereas the secondary conditions usually affect elderly women. The bruit is a feature of Graves mostly. Bruit is not usually present in secondary conditions. The antibodies are of course a feature of primary thyrotoxicosis because it's an autoimmune condition. Then the treatment of choice, of course in secondary mostly surgery is the treatment of choice, whereas when it is primary thyrotoxicosis you can use radioablation or even medical management. So when we talk of investigating the case or working out the lab workup, the most common thing or the most easy thing to ask for is one TSH and one free T4. So with the TSH and free T4 you can easily analyze the condition. If the TSH is suppressed and the free T4 is raised, which is a very common scenario, and that is what we mean actually by when we talk of thyrotoxicosis, that the thyroid hormones are raised and the TSH is suppressed, it is a condition of hyperthyroidism. If eye signs are associated, you are sure you are dealing with autoimmune condition or Graves ophthalmopathy and Graves disease. If the eye signs are not present and there is no goiter or rather a small goiter, you can subject your patient to a scan and you will find if it is a high uptake, then you are dealing with either Graves or choriocarcinoma. If the uptake is low, then we are dealing with thyroiditis mainly. So it is a condition of either subacute thyroiditis or silent thyroiditis. If the no eye signs are present and you find MNG, that is multinodular goiter, or a single nodule which is toxic, then you know that you are dealing with either a toxic adenoma or multinodular goiter. In case it's a very rare condition, if you find both the hormones are higher, TSH is also raised and FT4 is also raised, which is a very rare condition, that is a secondary hyperthyroidism due to a pituitary TSH secreting adenoma. It is a very rare condition, but then that is a condition when you find that the pituitary is the culprit and you have a very high source of TSH coming from pituitary that is causing the thyroid gland to produce more of the thyroid hormones. In conditions where you find a TSH which is suppressed but the FT4 is normal, which is again another rare condition, but we do come across a case of T3 toxicosis, that you will have to find out what are the T3 values. Very rarely you will find conditions of T3 toxicosis. So T3 toxicosis is another condition you have to keep in mind if the TSH is suppressed and FT4 remains normal. If the T3 is also low, probably you are dealing with the sick U syndrome or the non-thyroidal illnesses. In that case, you definitely have the background that the patient is either in ICU or patient is in CCU, or because of the septicemia, there are other non-thyroidal illnesses which are causing sick U syndrome. Otherwise, you can even consider then if the patient is clinically, you can find some clinical features, some mild tremors maybe or weight loss. Probably you are dealing with subclinical hyperthyroidism. So that is also very important to consider. Now with that, I will quickly go through few slides because a very long talk otherwise. I will just go very quickly through few very rare cases of thyrotoxicosis because the topic is thyrotoxicosis. So just keep in mind that we might come across neonatal Graves that is due to the transplacental passage of the antibodies, and if the mother is having Graves and high titers of thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins which might cross the placenta and cause neonatal Graves. Then after neonatal Graves, you have to keep in mind another autoimmune condition where their TSH receptors are stimulated, and since birth the population is hyperthyroid and we do not have much treatment because antithyroid drugs will also not act here, we'll have to go for surgeries. Then another rare condition is that thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins are passed to the neonates through breast milk also. Then the TSH resistance is another condition where the TSH secreting pituitary tumor, that is secondary hyperthyroidism, is another very rare condition. But here you will find that the hemianopia, that is the bitemporal hemianopia, because of the pressure effects on the chiasma, the features of pressure effect on chiasma will be there. Then another very rare condition, though we have few cases, the resistance to thyroid hormone. The thyroid hormone resistance is a condition, it's a familial autosomal dominant condition where you will find there's a peripheral resistance. Patient will always have a very high TSH level and also a very high thyroid hormone levels, and usually somehow clinically the balance is maintained and the patient is clinically asymptomatic and the patient clinically is euthyroid. Though you will have always the report will tell you that the TSH is also high, the FT4 is also high. Then there is a condition of pituitary level, there's a resistance at pituitary level also, and this is the reason that we have a high TSH